Well, hello, and welcome to the fourth day of our 4-day seminar. Letting go saved my life, and trying to find out what you need to let go of in 2020, and so you can move forward in 2021 with full steam ahead and not carrying on the baggage again you may want to leave behind from 2021 or even further back in the past. Hello, this is Reinhard Klett again, and I am commending you for joining us. I'm so happy that you are spending the extra time here at the end of the year and trying to figure out what can I do that I can move forward with a little bit more energy in the next year. Primarily, as we have said before, letting go of things that are holding us back is like taking the foot off the brake. And then we can step on the gas and really do well in 2021. And the focus again is on thinking about what can I let go so that I can become the best self, the best version of myself. That how can I let go of things that are holding me back from not doing what I want to do, what my mission is. And so in the first 3 days, we covered a few very important subjects. On the first day, we talked about control, letting go of control, which is what literally saved my life when I was a student pilot. And on my third solo flight, I was in what they call a graveyard spiral. And the only thing that saved me or helped me to get out of that spiral was literally letting go of all the controls and saying, God, take this plane. That took me out of that downward spiral instantly. And maybe there's something in your life that feels sort of like it's putting you on a downward spiral. Sorry about this one. I have to forgot to turn off my phone, but this is how it goes when you do a live recording, that sometimes you make it a bit of a mess, but this is just the way it is. So sorry about that. Now let's go forward. And again, letting go of fears and worries was another one that we covered in the first session, in addition to letting go of the controls. Sometimes we are controlling things or overly control things because of our fears and worries that things don't go well unless we are fully engaged always in everything. And we think we have to control every situation. And sometimes actually one thing that came up during our first session, a new phrase that one of you helped me to coin, so to speak, and that is when we are trying to be too controlling, it's often because we're perfectionists, and perfectionism in a way is a form of fear, that we think things are not going well, and unless things are perfect and everything is always buttoned up 100%, we cannot move forward. We are afraid to move forward. And so those were the things we covered in our first session. In the second one, we talked about ego, ranging from all the way from pride and arrogance to very low self-esteem, and all has to do with our ego. And we talked about how to replace ego with confidence and humility, which can coexist at the same time and actually benefit each other. And on the third webinar that we did on our third day yesterday, we talked about the past and grudges, and often grudges developing into bitterness or being mad about things, being bitter about things, and that's always because of whatever happened in the past, and how to avoid those situations, and realizing that really when we stick too much in the past, it doesn't help us to be fully in the present, to be fully in the moment, and to do the best we can right in the here and now. And also, it's really hurting ourselves if we're not letting go of grudges and bitterness. So those are the things that we covered yesterday. Now today, in our last day, in our last session, and thank you again for sticking with us here and help. Again, I really applaud you for wanting to work on your personal development and letting go of things that are holding you back. And sometimes that takes courage. And we don't always have the courage to make the changes in our lives that would move us forward. That brings me to our first one, the first issue, and that is being stuck or trapped in a way. And I want to share with you a little story that may help you put things in perspective here. When I was a student, an engineering student actually, I had an opportunity to work for some time in South Africa. And I had a job as an intern where I had to learn a lot of the metalworking stuff, how to work with metal, how to put things together. I was actually working for a company that was making equipment for the wine industry, the Cape Province of South Africa. And it was very enjoyable overall, my stay. But what the problem was, after a few weeks, I ended up doing just the same thing over and over and over again. And I really didn't enjoy much of what I was doing. But I felt like, yeah, since this internship was something that was arranged through an uncle of mine, and I felt sort of an obligation towards him to follow through with it because he, after all, connected me with the owner of that business. And but I did not have the courage to just leave. I was thinking, well, I have to go back to Germany. Those were the days before the internet, where you could just make a few phone calls or connect on the internet with people. And so I thought I had to stick it out for the rest of the time, which was about 6 months altogether that I had to do that internship. And but finally, what happened is there was tragedy. Tragedy struck. It didn't strike me directly personally, but an uncle of mine who was a farmer in Namibia, Southwest Africa. And he was a very successful farmer. He did really well. And that allowed him to actually buy a helicopter for his large farm, because in this desert country, the farms are very, very large, and it takes quite a lot of time to drive around and to see the farm, because they're so relatively few sheep per square mile, so to speak, because it's so dry, it's such a desert. But he had a helicopter, and unfortunately, he crashed with his helicopter and was killed. And that really struck me, because I thought, life's too short. What am I doing? I'm working on this internship. I'm not enjoying it. I get minimum wage, and I'm not learning anything. So what's the point? Why am I wasting my time? And so in that particular situation, it was the tragedy that shook me up and told me, you better think about this, and you better look for something else. And thankfully, I was talking to the lady that used to cut my hair. Her husband used to work for the company as a draftsman, the company I had worked for and wasn't happy with. And so I talked to her, and thankfully her husband then talked with me, and he set me up with another company to complete my internship. And it worked much better. I learned a lot of things. It was much more fun working there. The owners asked questions, asked even for my input. They gave me a bonus at the end. So it was a much, much better situation. But it took tragedy to make me make that move. Now, the question for you is, are you stuck in a situation, in a job or in a business, where you feel literally stuck? You don't like it. The environment may be toxic. It may even affect your health. Maybe you're working too hard, and yet at the same time, while you're exhausted, which affects your health, it may affect your relationships. Do you feel fulfilled? Even if you're comfortable in your job and it pays well, but do you feel fulfilled? At the end of your life, do you think, yeah, I had a good time and it was great. I felt like fulfilled. I made a contribution. And I'm not talking about necessarily focusing on the easy life. As an old aunt of mine said one time, it's better to have a hard life than an empty life. So I'm not necessarily talking about just coasting and taking it easy. No, I'm talking about doing your best and feeling fulfilled at the time, but without being totally exhausted and worn out, affecting your health and therefore affecting your effectiveness and your productivity, and also your relationships often when you're exhausted. So think about that. Are you in a situation where it may be wiser to look for a move? to change things, to maybe start a different career, or to sell the business and do something that you really want to do where you're fulfilled, where you can do your life's work? Ask yourself about that. And another situation is sometimes where people feel stuck, maybe not on their job, but maybe where they live. And that reminds me of a story that I heard on the radio several months after the Hurricane Katrina hit in New Orleans. Most of you probably remember that. It was devastating for the whole city. Now, on the radio, there was an interview with a lady who had several children, and she was forced, based on the destruction of her house, she was forced to move away from New Orleans. She was forced to move out of that neighborhood. And she said it was the biggest blessing in her life, the fact that she was able to make that move. Had it not been for Katrina, for the hurricane, she would not have made the move. But this gave her an opportunity to get away from what was a very crime-ridden area. It was not really a safe place, a good place for her children to grow up. And now, because of this move, she had the opportunity to move to another state, to a small town, where she was able to raise her children in a much safer environment. And she was very, very happy that the change happened, that the move happened. And again, it doesn't always have to be a catastrophic event that moves us. Sometimes if we are stuck in a situation, and if you're stuck in a place that is not good for you and for your family, would you consider moving? And if not, ask yourself, what is holding you back? Of course, there's always a certain risk. There's the unknown. But what is the risk getting away from something that we know we don't like, that we know we don't want, that we know it's not good for us? It's those times when we need to seriously consider making a move. Now, it may not be a bad neighborhood that you live in. Maybe you live in a very good neighborhood. But sometimes people, they are on the other side of the spectrum, where the neighborhood is very, very expensive. I remember walking through a neighborhood where somebody tried to sell us a house in, a real estate agent, when we were looking for a house. And thankfully, we did not live in that neighborhood, because it would have meant for us to stretch ourselves all the time and to be strapped to a very high mortgage. We could have afforded it, but it wasn't worth it. And walking through that neighborhood, I remember I saw a lady from work. And I said, she lives in that neighborhood? And I knew her salary was not a high salary at all. She was making not much over minimum wage. And she lived in that expensive neighborhood, very expensive neighborhood, keeping up with the Joneses. She could have easily stayed at home with her children if she lived in a little bit more of a modest neighborhood, a safe neighborhood, a good neighborhood, new houses. But instead of living in a neighborhood where the houses were maybe between $150,000 and $200,000 at the time, a new neighborhood, she lived in a neighborhood where the houses were $300,000. Basically, all her salary went for the extra mortgage payments. So sometimes we may save ourselves a lot of money and a lot of trouble and a lot of headache and possibly a financial downward spiral if we move away from a neighborhood that is beyond our means. Now, if we have the money and it all works out, great, wonderful. If we can strive for that, if we can accomplish that, that's awesome. But why do we do it? Why do we spend money And that was something that I discussed with a financial advisor who interviewed me about this book about letting go. How can letting go help you with your financial situation? And I said, you know, sometimes people spend money they don't have to buy things they don't need, to impress people they don't like. Now that goes back to our second seminar or webinar that we did a couple of days ago on pride. Sometimes it just takes letting go of our pride and our ego, and that can save us a lot of money. The money we spend just to keep up with the Joneses. So consider if you are in a situation and you live a lifestyle that may be just there, that you may just live so that you can impress other people or keep up with your cousins. For example, I remember, and you have probably seen situations like that where people spend an extraordinary amount of money on very expensive weddings. I've been to one of those weddings. The focus was on the wedding. Unfortunately, the focus was not on the relationship, on the marriage, and it fell apart 6 months later. So always realize or think about it. Is what I'm doing here, as far as my lifestyle, whether it's the house I live or the money I spend on expensive traditions to compete with other people, is it to compete with other people? Is it pride that motivates me to do these things? Is it an image that I'm trying to uphold? Why? Why is that so important to us? Because in the end, most people that we are trying to impress don't really care one way or the other. It doesn't mean they like us or love us more because we spend more or we look like we have more money. No. They like us and they love us because we care for them and we respect them and we treat them well. So this brings me now to another thing that may hold us back, that may keep us stuck, and that is relationships. Now, when it comes to relationships, that doesn't sound like, oh, why are you telling me to let go of relationships or to separate yourself from people? That doesn't seem like a very nice thing to do. But sometimes that is necessary. And especially when it comes to an abusive relationship, there I would tell everybody, go away immediately without delay, separate yourself if the relationship is abusive. We gotten to know, that is my wife and I gotten to know an elderly couple that I was introduced to. Initially, it looked like very nice couple, very interesting to talk to, interesting background. There was some wisdom, there was a lot of book knowledge, I guess, which I discovered later. It was book knowledge. And the man but turned out to be a person that I needed to separate myself from. She was a very nice lady, but he turned out, from what we learned, that he was actually an abusive man. He had 5 children. One of them committed suicide. Now, I do understand that this can happen in the best of families. But the remaining of the children want to have nothing to do with him. That doesn't sound like somebody who really knows how to be treating his family well. The children invited the mother, told her, stay with us, but they never invited the father to their house. When I found out that it was kind of abusive, and what topped it off for me, he always used a lot of religious language. And he used that as well to trap his wife. And she was from a generation and from a background where divorce was not an option. unfortunately, it should probably be the last resort. But if there's abuse, and I'm talking also including physical abuse, it's time to go. It's time to separate ourselves. My wife stayed in touch with that person because she felt sorry for her, for the lady. I separated myself from a relationship with that man. I didn't want to have anything to do with him anymore. And I told him so. And I told him why. And he thought that I was very harsh and judgmental. And I said, it's not serving you and it's not serving me. It's just serving your ego that you can call me your friend, maybe. But I don't like the way you treat people. And also what he was doing, not only was I not able to have a positive influence on him because he was not the person to listen. He always tried to tell other people when they were accomplishing more than he did, because he did not accomplish much in his business or in his work. But he always, like, he would tell me, oh, don't try to accomplish too much, or don't strive to be a yuppie or whatever. And he was somebody who was trying to hold you back, discouraged you from reaching more or doing more. That just didn't make any sense. So I had to separate my relationship with him. And again, life is too short. If we spend our time with people, with relationships where neither do we have a positive impact on them, we cannot possibly influence them in a positive way because they're very close-minded, and they also don't contribute to our growth and to our edification, then what's the point? So that's why I had to separate myself. But that will then free us up to have the energy and the relationships with people that really help us, with friends that encourage us, with friends that we can help out, even if it's a situation where we do all the giving and the helping, at least it's productive, it's meaningful. And so the question is this: are we wasting our time with meaningless relationships and therefore rob ourselves the opportunities to have more meaningful relationships where there's a mutual benefit, at least a benefit to one of the two parties involved? So let's think about that when we consider relationships and how they may trap us and how they may hold us back. Another area where people spend time is where there are false obligations, where people do things out of obligation, but they don't really feel like their heart is in it. I had an involvement in a business where we tried to do good to people, to certain people. But my heart wasn't really all that much in it. I know we were trying to do good, but it had to do with in the broadest sense of the word, a charity that I had no heart connection with. And it also, things weren't working out. There was mismanagement, all kinds of things like that. So it was time for me to separate myself and to focus on serving people in an area where I feel like it gives me joy. It has something to do with my personal calling, with my personal mission. There's a lot of issues in the world, a lot of charities, a lot of organizations that we can get involved with. But the question is it our calling? Is it what we are uniquely qualified to do, where we are uniquely qualified to serve? And I'm not saying that it has to be serving always at a very high level in the sense of taking full advantage of our background, our education, whatever it is, no. But if it's deeply meaningful, the service that we do, and if we're serving people that we feel like we really want to serve, and we're doing it together with people who have the same mindset, where we encourage each other, where we are having a giving, a serving attitude together, and we grow as people. If that's the situation, that's what we want to be in. But if we spend a lot of time in areas where we don't feel like our contribution is really all that helpful, where we really don't make much of a difference, where it may be a club or some kind of an organization or an association where we're just spending time there. We just do it because it's comfortable. We do it because it's routine, because we do it because it's a habit, but it doesn't really make us fulfilled. Then maybe that's the time where we say, okay, may my time be spent more effectively somewhere else? May I be able to make a bigger difference in another organization or in another association or on a personal level with people? So always analyze all aspects of your life. What have you been spending your time on in 2021, in 2020? And sometimes there may have been situations where in 2020 you were not able to have in-person meetings. And sometimes those situations, they tell you, did you miss anything? If you missed it greatly and you were really sad and upset that you could not meet in person, it's probably the organization you want to stick with and the association you want to stick with because it gave you something. But if you, after a few weeks or a few months, whatever your situation may have been and whatever lockdown constraints you may have had where you are, if you feel like that didn't really make that much of a difference, that you didn't meet with them anymore, maybe that's an indication that it's time to move on and to look for something else, for something that provides you more important connections that are more fulfilling and more meaningful to you. And where you feel like you can do more, where you can contribute more and serve at a higher level. Another area where sometimes people are held back, false obligations. Obligations thinking that thinking that we have to maintain certain traditions. I'm thinking about initially I came as an exchange student from Germany, and then later on when I met my Canadian wife, we decided to settle in North America again. But growing up in Germany, I never knew anything about Halloween. We didn't have Halloween. Halloween didn't get introduced to Germany until Walmart moved to Germany for a while, and then they closed because the business model didn't work there so well. Different culture. Anyway, so I didn't grow up with Halloween. And when I came here, I thought, that is a strange custom. That is a really strange custom. They put skeletons on the front yard and all those kinds of spooky things, and kids just go around and beg for candy. That just seemed really, really strange. And I must admit, I really don't care for that custom. Now, I understand that some people had a lot of fun as kids growing up doing it, so they keep doing it and they want to share the fun. I can see that. But it just, from an outside perspective, for somebody who's not used to that custom, it's really doesn't make a lot of sense. So I've never felt the obligation to participate in that kind of a tradition. And even if it's a tradition that you grew up with, let's say I grew up with doing a lot of gift giving and gift exchanges around Christmas time, and I felt it was very stressful. Now, actually, I came I was in my early 20s. My siblings and I, we were 6 kids. We decided, forget it. We're causing ourselves too much stress. Let's just give up that frenzy of, chasing for Christmas gifts and trying to figure out what to get everybody, and just let's just skip that. Let's just, be together and have joy together, but let's not, get so much caught up in the economics of it, or in the, how shall I say, the just the buying and the commercialization of the holiday there. Let's just get out of it. And I must say, what a relief, what a stress relief it was for me. So sometimes we have to look at traditions with a new perspective, fresh perspective, and say, is this really necessary? Now, and then again, you may came across new traditions, like when I came to America as an exchange student, I experienced Thanksgiving for the first time, and I thought that was pretty nice. I really enjoyed that. Now, it doesn't always have to be all the trappings of the dry turkey, and the other things, but just the idea of getting together and to express gratitude. I mean, that's a universal virtue, I think, that basically all cultures see as a good virtue, to express gratitude. Especially to our Creator, and we express gratitude towards each other as well. But gratitude is a good virtue, in that sense, to have a special holiday that expresses gratitude. I think that's a wonderful thing. I think gratitude is one of the things that we simply don't have enough. So a tradition to remind us of that is wonderful. So there are some traditions that are great, maybe new traditions that you can embrace that make a lot of sense, but some traditions just don't make any sense. And even Jesus Christ himself said, there are some vain traditions that you guys keep, and you're even ignoring my law by keeping some of your traditions, which they were keeping at the time. That were traditions that were not even in the Word, in the Bible at the time. So just think about it. How can you liberate yourself from some traditions that make you feel trapped and feel this sense of obligation? And, sometimes people, when you stop keeping a certain tradition, people will say, what's wrong with you? Or they feel almost criticized if they keep the tradition, you don't. And but that goes over. Just do what is right, with a clear conscience, and not worry so much about what other people think, because if they just want you to maintain a tradition to make them feel good, what is their motive? So think about it that way. Another thing is, we have often, speaking about Thanksgiving, oftentimes we can liberate ourselves or free ourselves from trappings. Let's say at a family get-together, like at Thanksgiving, what are we focused on? Are we focused on the trappings, or are we focused on the relationships? Are we thinking, okay, all the decorations need to be matching, like there should be prints with turkeys on them, on the napkins, there should be, everything should have a Thanksgiving theme, like this fall theme, and the turkey has to be made just exactly the way grandma did it, or the pumpkin pie, or whatever it is. And people slave away for a long time, spend a lot of time and effort and money on all the trappings, yet they're not focused on the relationship, on being really present in the moment. And if we are there with the intention to be present for the family members, to not only focus on how can I have a good time, how can I have the best food I want, or the traditional food, or the way I think it should be done, or whatever. If we can relax a little bit and not be so focused on the trappings, we can actually have a much greater time. And guess what? People will remember with how much you engaged them in the conversations, how much you were present for them, especially children also. How much were you present for them and spent time with them and focused on giving them a good time, rather than on just doing everything right in respect to the trappings that are often involved in some of those traditions. Or a lot of people put up all kinds of decorations around holidays and so on, and they spend a lot of effort. And then I saw on the other day, I saw something on Facebook. Somebody posted about, Alexa, the person people speak to get an answer on the phone. Alexa, can you please take down all the Christmas decorations? Again, maybe some trappings we may consider just forgetting about it because they really don't mean as much as they should. And it's just a tradition that we hang on to. And maybe in some cases, maybe just have become an empty tradition. And another one is that we can liberate ourselves. Another area where we can work on in the future, and that is letting go of all the stuff. It was interesting when my father retired. He and my mother, they took care of a lot of wills that they executed. He was the executor of the will that was part of his career was being involved in drawing up people's last wills and testaments and so on. He got to become the executive wills for a lot of people. So when he retired, a lot of those people then passed away, and he and my mother occasionally would clear out a house because the heirs were living overseas or couldn't be reached or couldn't care less. They didn't care about it or didn't want to, give it any attention. And so he would clear out houses, and he said, we're not going to do that to our children when they pass away, to having to get rid of all that stuff. And so they made it a point actually to get rid of stuff in their lives. For example, every year, 1 year they would go through the attic and take things out, all the things that they didn't use the 2 years before. They hadn't used for 2 years. And then the next year they'd go to the basement and clear out all the things that they didn't use for 2 years. And so they either gave it away to like a Goodwill or Salvation Army or some thrift store where people could use it, or give away to other people, to us children, and or they threw it away if it wasn't usable and nobody wanted it anymore or had any use for it. And even if it's something of value and we want to give it away some point once we're gone, why not give it away today? Just take the clutter out of your life and make it simpler and easier for everybody else to follow. So that's just an idea that I have, and I must admit I have not fully implemented it in my house. When you have space, you have an attic and you have a basement, and it's not full yet. You still have space. Sometimes you don't make it a priority to get rid of things, but when you think about the ones that come after you, it may be a good idea to do that. And sometimes when we clear out things, physical clutter in our lives, it actually helps us to declutter our mind as well, because we don't spend time and energy on it anymore. So those are some of the other things that I thought about, that would help us to free our lives, to move forward. One more thing that I want to bring up, one more thing to let go of, and especially in a year of 2020. Some of the stress that we felt, particularly in North America, during this year was some tensions, racial tensions, and ethnic tensions going on. And that often was fueled by a lot of rhetoric, negative rhetoric on all sides involved. And one of the reasons why sometimes this kind of strife continues is because one of the things that I talked about a couple of days ago when I talked about pride. Pride is one of those things that make us think in groups. It fosters groupthink, this us and them thinking. And one of the things that if we let them go, is stereotypes. There are certain cultural characteristics between ethnic groups. I understand that. I've traveled to over 30 countries over the years in the world, and I've lived in 3 countries and worked traveled to all 5 continents, worked with people with many, many different cultures. And there are certain national characteristics or tendencies, let's put it this way. But I prefer, and what I have learned is, many times you run into people that defy every stereotype you have about the culture where they come from or the country where they come from. And, you know, I have met some of the sloppiest people that I've ever met were German, where I didn't expect that from them based on the culture, because typically people try to be pretty clean and organized as a culture. But the people that I met that I assumed were clean and organized, no, they weren't. No, they were some of the sloppiest people. And I have met people from countries where I expected, based on television exposure, where I expected the person to be irrational, to be just led by emotions, to be filled with hate. One of the nicest, sweetest, soft-spoken person I ever met was from a country with a culture where there was the stereotype that's the culture. Now, even if some of the stereotypes may apply to a particular culture, if we treat everybody as individuals, that will help us to really see them for who they are. That way, we're not naively trusting people just because we think they're a certain way because we are familiar with their culture, because maybe they come from the same culture. But it also helps us to open our minds to see people from other cultures, to not be like the stereotypes that we have in our minds about them. And that is one thing that I've come to also realize and really appreciate about the events that I attended with Brendon Burchard, the one who coached and trained us to become certified high performance coaches. Whenever I went to his events, he attracted people from all walks of life, from all over the world, with very extremely different backgrounds, cultural backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, the kinds of trials that people went through. Unbelievable how different they were from that perspective. But they had one thing in common. There were no jerks among them. They were such nice people. They were positive, they were optimistic, they were loving, they were caring, they were concerned with you. They had a giving, a serving attitude. They had a growth mindset. It was fantastic. And to be open with them and to say, okay, you are an individual who wants to grow. I will treat you with the utmost respect and share my love with you because you are an individual. You are an individual that is loved by God. And you're an individual who wants to strive to be the best. So I'm not going to pigeonhole you. I'm going to treat you with an open mind and give you the benefit of the doubt. And it's unbelievable the kinds of relationships that can open up to you if you approach it with that kind of mindset. So I hope that even if you've come into this year with stereotypes, and maybe some stereotypes were even solidified based on a lot of the political rhetoric that's been going on as well, or whatever you've noticed, free yourself from that and think about it, how much it could be a blessing to you if you opened your mind if you opened your mind to new relationships, meaningful relationships that are not made impossible by stereotypes, where you say, no, I don't want to have anything to do with people like that from that culture. There was somebody that befriended me on Facebook, and I didn't know the person, but I knew some of the people that she was friends with. So it tells you they are the friends that you have in common. So I said, oh, what's the harm? Elderly person. Don't worry, I'll just befriend her too or friend her back. Fine. A little later, she said, I have no idea how we became friends on Facebook. I would never become friends with a damn German. I thought, What does that have to do with anything, the fact that I'm German? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what her background or what my background is. I'm not the person that has ever done her any harm. Why that attitude, you know? So, of course, you know, it's if somebody is that way towards us, we just think, okay, it's their loss, no problem. But I feel sad for her to be trapped like that because she's clearly limiting herself. And so let us not be those people who limit ourselves in that way. So again, there's a lot more to it. And I would like you to take the time to dig into those topics. And for that purpose, if you're not already familiar with my book that I published this year, Letting Go Saved My Life, which is now also available as a CD. And you can order that on my website, on carriedoneagleswings.com. It's also available on Amazon because I only ship within the US. Overseas shipments right now, it's too difficult. Even to Canada, it's not very convenient at all. So, but it's available on Amazon worldwide or in bookstores worldwide. It's also on Amazon available as an ebook. It's actually on various platforms available as an ebook, and then also as an audio version on Amazon. So you can get it in whichever way you want. The book is basically telling you in more detail the story on how letting go literally saved my life as a student pilot. And then it also has 16 chapters, some of which we covered during these 4 days, chapters in which we discovered different areas in life where we may need to let go of. And at the end of each chapter, there's coaching style questions, which then help you to dig a little deeper into your mind and find out what you could let go of, and maybe on finding out what's been holding you back from letting go. And again, to me, letting go is sort of like taking the foot off the brake. And as a coach, I help people not only take the foot off the brake, but also step on the gas. In other words, to apply the habits that research has demonstrated that high performance people who want to accomplish things and make a contribution, maximize their contribution, that those people have developed over time in any country where they live, across all spectrums, all kinds of different industries or endeavors. They have all high performers have applied those habits that I'm coaching people to develop. One of them is one opportunity you have is to get into personal coaching, where I would be your personal coach. And there's an application form for that. You will have to apply for that. And then we would do a 1-hour free coaching session after you send in your application to find out whether that's something that resonates with you and that's something that you want to do to really maximize your potential. But there's also the opportunity to participate in a group coaching. And we are starting on February the 1st in 2021. It's a weekly group coaching starting at 6 o'clock Monday morning, every Monday morning. Yes, 6 o'clock Monday morning. I figured that is the time when most people who have a high performance mindset, who want to maximize their contribution, start their week right. And it's not usually a time where they're already scheduled to do something else that they can't move around a little bit. So starting the week right every Monday morning at 6 o'clock, and there's a subscription to that. And you can look that up also on my website when you just go to carriedoneagleswings.com / and then you look at bed coaching. There's the group coaching and there's the individual coaching as well. And then also what I do offer for those who want to get a little bit more into spiritual coaching based on biblical principles. I have a free coaching, weekly coaching for that every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock, actually starting this Sunday on, it's January the 3rd at 8 o'clock. And you will find a link there on my website as well. So that's carriedoneagleswings / carriedoneagleswings.com / Bible. And I will send you, when you register for this, when you have registered for this, you will also get a link to to all those things. And I will send you emails with all the links that you need for the different things that we do offer. So I hope that this was of value to you, that you have learned something, that you've gotten something out of this. Thank you very much for sticking with us here. I know you have invested a lot of time into this and looking into this, and I commend you for it. And I wish you all the best for 2021 and encourage you to let go to possibly save your life. Take care and keep well.